Hello, welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi. Tokay Menachot Daf 64 Amud B. I just go for the last line, last Omer. The Gemara answers. It is obvious that we bring 3 figs, as Rabbi Shmuel states only there in the Mishnah that 3 say of barley are wheat and Shabbat, as in a case where one limits the amount available for eating. He likewise limits the amount of reaping. But here, when one limits the amount of eating by bringing the 2 figs, it also increases the amount of reaping. Therefore, it is certain that we bring the ill person the 3 figs attached by a single stem. In the Mishnah, mitzvah Omer lahavi min hakorov. The mitzvah of the Omer is to bring the barley reaped for the meal offering from fields proximate to Jerusalem. So what's the footnote? What does that mean? Mitzvah Omer lahavi min hakorov. The Omer meal offering must be brought from the lands of Eretz Yisrael. Ideally, the Omer should be brought from fields near Jerusalem. If it cannot be brought from such a field, it may be brought from anywhere within the borders of Eretz Yisrael. And that's the Ram Sefer Vod Hilchat Tamidim Sofim 7:5. If the barley did not ripen in the fields proximate to Jerusalem, one brings it from any place in Eretz Yisrael. There was an incident when the Omer came from Gaggot Tzerifin. And there's a picture here. Gaggot Tzerifin. Another version of the text reads Gaggot Tzerifin. Either way, this place is generally identified with modern-day Tzerifin, a name preserved in Arabic, Sarafand al-Amar, which is a village east of Rishon LeZion, along the road from Ramla to Jaffa. And the wheat for the 2 loaves and Shavuot came from the valley of En Socher. The accepted identification of En Socher is a valley known in Arabic as Sal Ashka. It is located southwest of Mount Ebal, and the main road from Nablus to Jerusalem runs through it. The name is apparently derived from a deep well, Ayin, located in a neighboring village. And there's a picture here of the Menachot Valley, which includes the valley of En Socher. The Gemara asks, what is the reason that the barley wheat for the Omer offering should ideally be brought from fields proximate to Jerusalem? The Gemara answers, if you would say that it's because the verse states, and if you bring a meal offering of first fruits to the Lord, you shall bring for a meal offering of your first fruits a grain in the air parched with fire, even groats of the fresh air, carmel, Leviticus 2:14. The only comment to explain that this exposition is based on an interpretation of the term for a fresh ear of grain, carmel, as an abbreviation of 2 words, soft, rach, and twistable mal. Only grain reaped close to Jerusalem would remain soft and twistable when brought to the temple. Once it is transported from a further distance, it is likely to dry out on the journey to the city. And that's from Rashi and Tosfot. Tosfot on Shabbat 6a cited the explanation in the Jerusalem Talmud that carmel means that the grain is neither fresh nor dry, but in between these stages. This indicates that the grain should be soft and fresh. Consequently, it should be bought from close by, not from a place where it might become stale and hardened during a long journey. And if you wish, say instead that the reason is due to the principle that one does not postpone performance of mitzvah. When presented with the opportunity to perform a mitzvah, one should perform it immediately. Therefore, the barley for the mitzvah of the Omer meal offering in the temple should be bought from the first crop and carried outside of Jerusalem. The Mishnah teaches that an instance where the Omer came from Gaggot Tzerifin and the 2 loaves and Shavuot came from the valley of En Socher. The sages taught a brayta that provides the background of this event. When the kingdom of the Hasmonean monarchy besieged each other, Keshesaru Malachei ben Chashmonai Zeh al Zeh. Before her death, Queen Shalom Tzion appointed her son Hyrcanus II to serve as king. His brother Artabolus II initiated a rebellion and took control of much of the country. Later, with the assistance and encouragement of Antipater, the father of Herod, Hyrcanus fielded an army that defeated the troops of Aristobulus and forced them to take refuge within the walls of Jerusalem. During the course of this siege, those inside Jerusalem were in need of sheep to continue the sacrificial rites in the temple, and they paid large sums of money to those on the outside to supply them. This story is also found in the works of Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, 19:2, where he records that those in the city needed sheep for the Paschal offering, and promised the huge sum of 1,000 drachma for each sheep. Joseph writes that there was an open divine punishment for the treachery of the men of Hyrcanus in the form of a savage storm that tore through the land, damaging most of the crops. Perhaps this was to allude to in the expression, as Eretz Yisrael shuddered 400 parasangs by 400 parasangs. In their civil war, Hyrcanus was outside of Jerusalem besieging it, and Aristobulus was inside. On each and every day they would lower dinars in a box from inside the city, and those on the outside would send up animals for them to bring the daily offerings in the temple. So there's a point here for dinar. What's a dinar? Dinar, a term for a silver coin, is derived from the Latin denarius, which originally meant containing 10, as the dinar was worth 10 isa. Used across the Roman Empire, the dinar weighed approximately 3.9 grams. By the Talmudic period, the value of the coin and the amount of pure silver it contained had decreased due to the admixture of copper in the silver. A certain elderly man was there in Jerusalem who was familiar with Greek wisdom. Chachmas Yevonis. The majority of the commentators explain that this refers to the skill of communication by means of riddles and linguistic allusions, which was known only to the nobility, not common folk. If so, it is not a reference to Greek philosophy, which has no obvious relevance to the story. The Rambam notes that no trace of this advanced secretive method of communication remains today. Commenting on the Mishnah Sota 9:15, some maintain that Greek wisdom means philosophy, the Miriam Bava Kama 18:2b. Yet others explain it as a reference to astrology and similar matters. Shita Mechubeses said no matter Bava Kama 82b. He communicated to those on the outside using words understood only by those proficient in Greek wisdom. An elderly man said to them, as long as they engage with the temple service, they will not be delivered into your hands. Upon hearing this, on the following day, when they lowered dinars in a box, they sent up a pig to them. Once the pig reached halfway up the wall, it inserted its hooves into the wall, and Eretz Yisrael shuddered 400 parasangs by 400 parasangs. When the sages saw this, they said at the time, curses he who raises pigs, and curses he who teaches his son Greek wisdom. Some explain that the decree prohibiting the study of Greek wisdom was a direct result of this incident. Others say that this incident was merely the final impetus to enact the enactment of the decree. But the real reason was to curtail apostasy caused by interaction with the Greeks and their culture. And as in the Ozer Mefarshei HaTalmud to Bava Kama 82b, and it is with regard to that time of civil war in which the land was destroyed that we learned an incident occurred in which the Omer, the measure of barley brought as a communal offering on the 16th of Nisan, came from Gaggot Tzerifin, and the 2 loaves offered on Shavuot came from the valley of En Shochet. Since no fresh barley grain was found in the field immediately surrounding Jerusalem, it had to be brought from the outlying areas. And Gemara relates another tradition with regard to that occasion when the Omer came from Gaggot Tzerifin and the 2 loaves from the valley of En Shochet. When it came time to bring the Omer meal offering, they did not know from where they could bring the Omer grain, as all the surrounding fields were looted and ruined. The court publicly proclaimed the difficulty. A certain deaf mute, a hirsha. What's a hirsha? Charsha, sorry. This Aramaic word is derived from the Hebrew cheresh, which means a deaf person. Although there is a separate word for a mute, elim, the sages use cheresh in reference to a deaf mute. The Rambam explains that this is because his muteness is the result of his deafness. It should be noted that even a mute who can hear is also referred to as a cheresh. Came forward and stretched out one hand toward a roof, gag in Hebrew, and one hand toward a hut, had tzerifa. Mordechai said to the sages, who's Mordechai? Rashi explains that this is the Mordechai of the book of Esther. Tosfos rejected the explanation as it's impossible that Mordechai lived so long. The Hadamanian kings reigned for 260 years before the destruction of the temple, and the time of Achashverosh of Esther was some 300 years earlier than that. Therefore, they explain that Mordechai was not a proper name of an individual, but a title reserved for one possessing a leadership position in the temple. The wise men who attained this rank were experts in language, mode of communication, and signals, and they were therefore called Mordechai after the Mordechai of the book of Esther, who was known as a language expert. And that's from Tosfos and Bava Kama 82b. With regard to the story of the 3 women and their nest, Tosfos can see that the wise man mentioned here, the Mordechai of the book of Esther, as the Gemara indicates that he was also called Petachia, which is another name of that Mordechai. And said to the sages, is there a place that's called Gaggot Tzerifin or Tzerifin Gaggot? They checked and found that there was such a place, and it contained fresh barley from which they were able to bring the Omer meal. A similar incident occurred when they needed to bring 2 loaves, but they did not know from where to bring the grain. Again the court publicly proclaimed the difficulty, and a certain deaf mute came forward and stretched out one hand toward his eye, ayene, and one hand toward a door latch, a sichwa. What's in a sichwa? Some common explanations are suggested for this word. Some say that it refers to a hole in the doorpost where the door latch is, similar to a sigil, which means that which closes Rashi in the Orach. Others explain that it is similar to a word for one who dams a river, or that it means a grave, tosfa. And the picture here of the latch. Mordechai said to the sages, and is there a place called in Socha or Socha Ayin? They checked and found that there was such a place, and it contained fields of wheat from which they were able to bring the 2 loaves. The Gemara relates another story that demonstrates Mordechai's wisdom. Once a certain 3 women brought 3 nests for their obligatory offerings of pairs of pigeons or doves. See Leviticus 15:29. One of them said, this offering is for my ziva, and one said, this is for my yama, and the last one said, this is for my owner. So what does that mean? The yamasi le'onasi. The sages interpreted yamasi as referring to a menstrual flow which flows as the sea, says Rashi. Some relate it to day yam, as she's completed the days of a menstrual flow. The expression my owner was understood by the sages as referring to the time owner of a requisite offering, which is born the 8th day of purity, says Rashi. The sages understood from the first woman's statement, for my ziva, that she had experienced a discharge of uterine blood when not expecting her menstrual period, which would give her the stage of an actual zava. Zava, this is a woman who experiences the flow of menstrual blood on the 3 consecutive days during the time of the month when she is not due to experience menstrual bleeding. The first secretion renders her virtually impure, but until the 3rd secretion, her state is that of a woman who observes a clean day for the day she experiences the discharge. After experiencing bleeding on the 3rd day, the woman is considered a full-fledged zava, or a greater zava, and must wait 7 clean days, after which she is obligated to bring an offering as part of her purification process. A zava imparts ritual impurity in the same manner as a zav. In addition, a man who engages in sexual intercourse with her becomes a primary source of ritual impurity and imparts impurity to others. From the second woman's statement, for my yama, they understood my actual yama, i.e. she was also a ziva, as yam can mean sea or flow of blood. From the 3rd woman's statement, for my owner, they came to the conclusion that she needed to bring a sacrifice for her time owner of completing a purification process of being a zava. Accordingly, they understood that all these women were obligated to bring 1 sin offering and 1 burnt offering. Mordechai said to the other sages, perhaps the first one was in danger in the course of a menstrual flow as zov. Similarly, perhaps the second woman endangered at Seir Yam, and finally, perhaps the 3rd woman endangered to her ayin, as ayin is phonetically similar to owner. According to the explanations, each woman sought to bring a voluntary offering to give thanks to God for being safe from danger. If so, the appropriate offering in each case is not a sin offering, as they're all burnt offerings. It was checked, and they found that Mordechai's interpretation was in fact correct. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all the best. Bye.